Well, welcome to
Yeah.
Simulation Pulse Live. I'm John Brouchoud, and I'm the founder and CEO of Arch Virtual. We're the developers of the Acadicus platform, and we have Bill Ballo here from Madison College. Welcome.
Hey, everyone.
So we don't have any specific topic today, just a
Yeah.
chance to chat and talk and see if there's anything coming up this week, any news or any events or anything or any questions that have been coming up on Acadicus that we can help answer or talk about or
Melissa Surway and I just did a presentation for VRARA. Um,
excellent.
it
I heard that went
went
well.
extremely well, extremely well. Melissa's a great presenter, so my job was to shut up and show a video. And I actually kind of like that. I'm getting that point now where it used to be me just out there constantly evangelizing for virtual reality and education and all that kind of stuff. And now it's more like you tell your story.
Yep.
I don't need to tell my story anymore. People have heard it a million times. So you tell your story. And I think that's a much better way to get things going. And I've noticed as far as what happens in the college, the more I get people telling their story, the more people will start to use virtual reality. It works way better that way. Um,
Absolutely.
that bottom up approach versus the top down approach. And it just happened recently because I had an instructor who had heard from another instructor. So we were using the birthing mannequin in her theory class, and so she had been talking to another instructor, and the other instructor was like, "Oh, really? How did you do that? Like, what was that all about?" And so she kind of told the instructor what we did and how we did it and what the students thought and all that kind of stuff. And so now I have another instructor who's like, "Oh, well, I'm willing to try it. Let's do it." Instead of having to get a bunch of people to lug a birthing mannequin over to Fort Atkinson and all that kind of stuff. And that's the other Fort Atkinson is not one of our normal places that we do VR. We're mostly Goodman South, Reedsburg, Watertown, and then Truax, obviously. But now Fort Atkinson has been added to it, which is really cool. So I got to find somebody at Portage. I got to hit them all, and then we're gonna have to go to Calm Ave and all of that too. So all those guys at
Absolutely.
Calm Ave, they're already doing some stuff. So they're doing some VR stuff. So actually, I already got them. So that's perfect.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was excited to see that you and Melissa had presented, and that's maybe something we could talk a little bit about. We talked last time about the importance of, really celebrating your internal evangelists, your in-house evangelists and getting, letting them tell their story. And that's exactly what you're doing. And so you and Melissa did this presentation, and she got to do most of the talking and kind of presented her innovative work with VR and Acadicus. And I think that's an important thing as you're bringing your program into virtual reality. There's obviously the nuts and bolts of like getting the hardware set up, figuring out the budget, who's going to be running the lab, what software are you going to use, all those questions. But once you stand up the program, and you start implementing it and you see how exciting, the results are, then it becomes a process of sort of disseminating that. It's almost like an academic responsibility to share that with others, in terms of what's working, what's not working, lessons learned. It's just a great service that you can provide to other people that are in a similar boat as you were, 6 months, 12 months ago.
Yeah.
You can tell them like, here are some of the lessons that we learned, and here's how you can make really effective use of it. So we're seeing that in the way of, we've talked a lot about the published research that's been done, where we're seeing, some of our customers are gathering data and then publishing that in journals. But then there's also this aspect of formal presentations for an organization like VRAR, and other organizations like it, and how valuable that is in bringing other programs up to speed.
Yeah.
So as you get farther and farther into your program, it's something to think about. Once you have a demonstrated use case and you've seen those results, you can, these programs, these conferences are always looking for people to come and talk
Yeah.
about the work that they're doing. So think about that, keep track of what the opportunities are, what conferences there are, and what you might talk about, as you go. Because again, it's that career sort of upward mobility where you're like sharing your work and advancing your career and getting an opportunity to get in front of an audience and share that work, is a
Yeah.
part of that innovation process.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the term academic responsibility. That's really good. It's
I
I
wondered when I
I
said that I'm a little bit out on the edge here.
I like that
Academic
one. I like that one
responsibility.
because I almost feel like it would be academically irresponsible for me not to share the possibilities of virtual reality. And I would say to people, if you're starting out in VR and you're new to VR, just know, just the fact that you have picked up a headset and you're starting to work on something, you are already ahead of the curve. Like from that point, you are already ahead of the curve. I will have people come to the XR Center and I'll talk about, we serve 26 programs and all of that kind of stuff. And they're like, whoa, there's no way. Yeah, there is. You absolutely can do it. Um, and you're already ahead of the curve because you have even just saying to yourself, we're going to incorporate virtual reality in our program and starting down a process, you're already ahead of the curve. You're already ahead of the curve.
Absolutely. Yep.
So, and then for me, it was which program, and in the early days when I first got my hands on Acadicus, I fell in love almost immediately. But I'm also the kind of person where I'm going to go, okay, I want to see what else is out there. Like what else is out there for me to work with. And for me it was like, well, okay, but it doesn't do this. And I kept coming back to like it was my groundwork, right? It doesn't do this, it doesn't do this, it doesn't do this. And Acadicus did, and that was what really, sold me on it. But it was then, because I knew at that point what I could do was to grow the program was going to be easier. It was going to be easier because I was going to get faculty buy-in quicker because I wasn't going to make them change something and I wasn't going to make them learn a whole new thing. That was the way I was going to get that faculty buy-in. So, if anybody out there is thinking, I don't know how I'm going to start this and who's going to run it, and you're not the person. I have talked to people who are not subject matter experts, they're instructional designers. And that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. So I kind of work in both worlds because of the paramedic background. But but I've talked to people who are instructional designers and not subject matter experts, and they're kind of like, I really need to get the subject matter experts involved. Like, yeah, absolutely. And the fear is always the thing. You want to belay that fear. You want to get rid of that fear, and you want to say, listen, when you come in, you don't have to learn a whole new thing. You don't have to learn a whole new program. You don't have to learn a whole new technology. You don't have to do all this stuff to try to figure out how you're going to incorporate this. It's relatively easy to incorporate. Do a quick where you're like, I'm just going to replace this one piece and I'm going to put virtual reality in. And that's what I did when it came to dynamic cardiology. I was like, I'm just going to pull this out and I'm going to put this in. And actually, it wasn't even pulling it out. It was, I'm going to work this alongside of it and we'll see where it goes from there. And it worked out really well. It worked out really well. So find that thing that you're good at. Find that person that's got that really like they're really into cardiology or they're really into, whatever, and get them involved, and get them in headset, and then you've got them.
And you got them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it sort of gets back to like your original, for many instructors, I think their original reason they got into academics and why they wanted to teach was, it usually isn't just like, I really want to stand in front of a group of students and give a lecture. Usually it starts with, I was in the hospital with somebody I love and I saw what a difference it can make if somebody's really skillful in their care for a patient. And so how does that work? And I want to get into teaching so that I can help educate, it's sort of that original thing. And when you get to the point where you've done those demonstrated use cases and you can share that knowledge, you're back to that original idea of like you've done something that works and now you want to share it with other people because ultimately your goal is to increase the quality of care, right? Hopefully reduce errors, save lives, all the great altruistic motivations behind this.
Yeah.
So you start off with that and some I'll be honest, I think some instructors that I've talked to, they see it as a little bit of a competitive thing where they don't want to give away their secrets. Like we learned all this secret stuff
Yeah.
about how to build a VR lab, and now we're competitive as a school, and we don't want to share that knowledge. We don't want to put that out there because this is our competitive advantage. But I think again, it's more about getting back to that original reason why you got into this is to improve that care. And the way you do that is by sharing how to use a technology that's going to accelerate your students' learning curve. There's really no victim there. You know, you're just you're helping increase and improve the overall state of the profession, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. My former colleague, Alan Natichu, the other thing is give credit, right? Always give credit where credit is due. And the people are going to keep wanting to come back. But my former colleague, Alan Natichu, Alan said to me we were at a conference in Denver and we were talking about, something different. And he said to me that he adopted something called teaching out loud, right? Or that's what either he called it that or it was something he adopted. I don't remember. I think he actually might have coined that phrase. I'm not sure though. But he said, that's his way of doing things now, is he teaches out loud. And whatever he does, the things that he does, he tries to make them available to other people so that they know what he did. He doesn't want to hide anything. He doesn't want to keep it all to himself. And if you do that, I mean, maybe you feel kind of good about the things that you've done, and that's great. But expanding your reach is much, much, much more impactful. I have talked to people I never, ever, ever thought I would talk to. I've talked to so many people I never thought I would talk to, and I've talked to so many programs that I never thought I would talk to. I don't know anything about architecture. I don't, I have no idea. John, you do, but I
Yeah,
I know nothing about that. Like when it comes to that kind of stuff, I didn't know anything about it. But I talked to that program. Now they're kind of doing they've got like their own lab and everything that they've created, which I think is amazing. Um, you know, but like there's programs that I've talked to that aviation, those kind of things that I never thought I would talk to because I'm just a paramedic. I was a guy that was on a truck. That was my job. And I got into teaching. I actually got into teaching because of my wife, one, but then I wanted to have a family and kids, and so I wanted something that was a little bit more stable for them. But then I also found out that I love to teach. I just loved it. And so why not share that with everybody? Why not share that enthusiasm with everybody? In a world where we don't share enough enthusiasm anyway, like share that enthusiasm with people. Show them how
absolutely.
cool it is to do what you do. So,
And you never know where the impact is going to be. When
yeah,
we give presentations or I give a presentation, sometimes you think, you're giving a presentation for 15 people or so, and maybe they take away some value, maybe they don't. But it's often like several months later, it's just one person that you talk to, like, I was at your presentation and it got me thinking, and I ended up doing this and this and this, and now this all happened, and you just
yeah,
never know what spark is going to hit and that's going to grow into a whole new thing. And it's all networking, it's all community. And that's the thing I love about simulation as a whole is that close-knit community and the fact that innovation is shared. That's not common across all industries, but I found that in simulation, especially again coming back to IMSH, where everybody gets together and they're like, here's what we're finding is working, and sharing all that and just advancing the cause of simulation because it's so important. Just it's definitely worth doing. So
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And besides that, it's fun too.
that's right.
I mean,
That's right.
it's a lot of fun. Even some of the challenges that we've had, one of the things is with Windows mixed reality sort of, sunsetting. One of the challenges that we've had is like, okay, what are we going to do when it comes to a different headset? Like what direction are we going to go in? Are we going to go in the meta direction? Are we going to go, in a different direction? Like, what are we thinking? What are we feeling? And I'm not here to tell anybody what headset to use. You test out the headsets, you use the one that fits you the best. For us, it turned out to be the Meta 3s. And now this morning, here I am sitting at my house, and I am going into a headset and setting up Meta 3s. And I'm just, all day long today, except for Simpulse, I'm going to be setting up a Meta 3. So I just got this like constant roll of Meta 3s that I have to set up because we just bought 40 of them. So, like every day I'm just a little more, a little more, a little more, a little more. And then I'm bringing my son into work with me on Monday, and he's going to help me transfer some of the computer stuff over to Meta, we're gonna like get rid of our Windows mixed reality and start using Meta and that kind of stuff. So like, it's been fun. It's been fun too. Yeah, the challenges come up, but if you greet those challenges, or I should say meet those challenges with more of a like a hey, we get to do something kind of new and cool mentality, then you can enjoy it. And it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun. So
Very cool. Very cool.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it seems like there's, I guess if I could get a little altitude on the state of the industry, that, we had a lot of sort of excitement and energy in the early days when the developer kits came out, and it just was like nothing's going to stop it. And then it sort of like got to a point where it stalled a little bit, maybe 8 years ago or so. And then during the pandemic, we saw just a huge amount of interest and a huge amount of investment in VR and virtual learning. And a lot of, sort of prospects or customers that we had done demonstrations to came back to us at that point and said, how does that virtual stuff work again? Obviously now all our students are at home and our instructors are at home. We need a different option. And so we saw this big sort of, growth of VR. But then I think as the pandemic started to, wind down a little bit, we saw a little bit of a retraction from that. I think the programs that had invested in VR kept going with it because they had all the equipment and they had the capacity to do it. But I think there was a little bit of a reluctance to continue. Like virtual learning was almost like something people didn't want to do. Like they wanted to kind of get back to traditional methods.
Yeah.
But now, I think now that we've got a little bit of distance there, I'm starting to see in my limited sort of access to the industry a resurgence. I think it's
Yeah.
happening again. And I think the next few years, we're going to see another growth spurt for VR because those programs that did adopt it during the pandemic and demonstrated the value and published and shared and gave presentations like you are
Mhm.
about it are starting to get out there. And we're seeing more and more of that happen. And also, there's more headsets that are in the works. We're
Yeah.
seeing Android XR is starting to make some interesting headlines, and there's certainly Valve is continuing to build some interesting hardware, and we're looking forward to that. So I think there's going to be this resurgence that's happening. I think we're in the middle of we're just at the beginning of that resurgence. So it's exciting to see that continuous, sort of evolution and adoption.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. It's a pendulum swing.
Yeah.
It's a pendulum swing. I feel like a lot of times it's a lot like even when you see like in the political climate, political atmosphere is a pendulum swing, right? It'll go to one side, it'll go to the other side, and it happened like with like you said with the pandemic. It was a very fast like somebody pushed the pendulum
Yeah.
over. It was like, okay, we need
Yeah.
this, right? And then because people were like, okay, I don't want to do this virtual learning anymore. I just want to get back to in person. I love it. So then the pendulum started to swing back again. But yeah, it's happening now where you are seeing more programs that are interested. I've even started to see programs that told me no previously are now coming back and going, okay, wait a minute. Tell me about this again. And I even have some programs that like they really got fired up around the pandemic, around that time frame, and then they kind of waned off. And I'm going to the point now where I'm like, because we're gonna have some help in the XR Center, I can now go back to those programs and say, listen, I know one of the problems was that you just didn't have enough support for utilizing this. Well, now we can do that. So let me give you a little bit more support, to run that program, to run that demonstration, whatever it is they were looking to do. Let me give you a little bit more support with that, and let's see if we can actually make that a reality. So yeah, and I think we're gonna see a little bit of a pendulum swing back and forth. But my hope is that with virtual reality, like somebody moves the fulcrum of the pendulum, right? So you keep moving it further and further. Yeah, you're gonna get some pendulum swing back and forth, but it's never gonna go back to we don't want to use virtual reality at all, right? You just keep moving the top of that pendulum over. So it's like, all right, well, where we were over here when it swings way over here, now that's the back end of the swing. Like we're
Yeah.
we're never going to go lower than we started with, or that we got to in that place where, Bill's talking about 26 programs. We're not going to go back to two. We're going to keep going. We're going to have 26 programs, and then we're going to have 42 or whatever. Oh, help me. And it's just going to kind of keep moving further and further. And I think that's how these things really work. And you just gotta have to you kind of have to ride that wave.
Yeah.
And it's not that hard to do. It's not that hard to do. You just kind of go with it and be ready for that and know that that's coming.
Yeah, I mean, there's really no going back. I mean, none of the headset manufacturers are saying, "Hey, let's come up with a headset that has half the resolution of what we have right now." They're not. They're going forward. They're, in programs that are demonstrating real world value, and they're saving money, substantial money, and they're seeing that return on their investment that they made during the pandemic. They're suddenly seeing like, wait a minute, we're actually saving a lot of money here. There's no going back at that point, and especially once it's become increasingly adopted in your curriculum, and the instructors that are using it get familiar with it and they understand how it works, and it gets easier and more efficient every time you do it. There's no going back at that point. So
No.
you're right, the fulcrum is changing and that continues, but it's like a seesaw back and forth of
Yeah.
like, little by little we keep
Yeah.
making it a little bit better. And even with a catechist, the content continues to increase in fidelity. We started off with very basic content. You couldn't even really interact or connect things, and then it got more and more interactive. And I think that's where we're at as a platform. People have been asking me, what's the future of a catechist look like in the new, as we go forward. And I think there was a time during the first several years where it was about sort of like, my background in architecture, it's like rip and tear building study models where you're just like tearing and gluing and just trying to get a concept. And then you keep on refining and you learn about what works and what doesn't work. And we've gotten to a point now where the platform is stable. We've got amazing customers that are doing really innovative work with it. And I'm kind of a mindset of, rather than continuing to just rock the boat and what if we do this and let's build, let's suddenly just integrate AI and let's do this or let's do that. And maybe we just kind of watch and see what's happening right now because it's amazing to see the work
Yeah.
that our customers are doing. And we're constantly building this new content, and all of the new content we're building is getting integrated into curriculum by the programs that are investing in that content. And it's an exciting space to be in where we're just sort of watching that value come into clarity. So rather than just continuously, so again, a pendulum, we're kind of in a state where I want to be a little bit more on the side of stability,
Yes.
and rather than just like constantly, because if you go too far, too fast, too fast, too much, like you're going to eventually lose track, lose focus. And
Yeah.
so that's where I see the state of a catechist at this point.
Yeah, you want those pendulum swings to be less on the edges, right? You want that pendulum swing to be more like this and less like this, right? Like
Yeah.
with that's what we want. We want less of those massive extremes. And and the thing is that a catechist is really good at, having that stability, having that and having that capability of moving and maneuvering and changing things. When you were talking about sort of the old days, is what I think of it. I think of I every once in a while I've done this, John. I've gone back into the old. I've kept the EMS ER that I made back in 2020 for my students. And Miles Johnson is in there, and Simon is in there. And I always go back and I'm like, okay, Simon can do this, and that. And that's pretty much it, right? Simon can do a few things. He could do like, no and stuff like that. And it was really cool back then. Like, wow, that's pretty neat. And now I look at like our Gen 2 patients and I'm just like, wow, the amount of difference. I've even talked about it for like one of our scenarios that we use Bjorn McClellan, and we use an older sort of a Gen 1 patient for that because Bjorn doesn't have a whole lot of things he has to do. But we had students that were like, okay, I'm going to check his lung sounds, and they could really only check his lung sounds on his back, and I couldn't change it too much. And I'm like, I'm actually going to change it. I'm going to take Bjorn out, and I'm going to put Michael in. And I sat Michael in the wheelchair and all of that. and that's kind of the cool thing about it too, is like, all right, this has worked well for us. I'm good with this. I like this. But let's take this particular patient out. We're still going to call him Bjorn, but we're just going to put this patient in. So as the pendulum swings, as things get a little bit better, the real key with a catechus is I can just go, okay, out you go and in with the new. And that's it. And
Absolutely.
it's that quick and that easy. I actually did a little demonstration for the students. And I think I talked about this in the last impulse, but I put Michael in with all the wrecked cars and all of that stuff. And the students eventually figured out they could pick him up.
Mhm.
And they were
That's
like,
right.
"Whoa, hold on, we can pick him up," and they were putting him all over the place and stuff like that. And that was sort of the that cool thing that they were able to do. But yeah, so that's what I did. I just hey, okay, this one is a little older. Don't get me wrong, still great, but I need a Gen 2 patient in here, and that's it.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, and as time passes and as that pendulum continues to swing, I think we're getting more clear about what we are as a platform and what the value proposition or the differentiators that we have. And I think when it comes to like building new features and new, capabilities, I think that's the question I think that we're always asking internally is obviously we have a lot of amazing competitors. We're fortunate to have great competitors in the VR healthcare simulation space. And, sometimes when I know that we're toe to toe with one of those competitors, it's a little bit, I don't know, I may be a little bit insecure about like, geez, they've got that capability or they don't need to be connected to a PC. But I think the farther we get along, the more we're becoming very clear about the value that we offer and that there are things that we can do that no other platform can do. And there's always going to be customers, especially, as you get more and more farther into your program, you're eventually going to want to edit your simulations. You're going to
Yeah.
eventually want robust editing tools, not just changing drop-down menus and changing a scenario's presets, but like actually grabbing on that IV pole and moving it around and setting Michael in the chair and setting up a mass casualty scenario and, you know, being able to create all that, it takes that heavy lift of the PC, and we've gone over that. And also, some schools really find value in live facilitation, where an instructor is
Yeah.
involved with facilitating a scenario. We're one of the only platforms that allows for that. Everything else is sort of pre-programmed, pre-scripted, and we've talked about that a
Yeah.
lot on the Pulse. But, we've gotten very clear about the fact that there's always going to be schools that will care about the instructor having the ability to run the simulation. There will always be organizations that want to do robust editing, and that's what we do. And so we own that, right? And we're rather than trying to like reach to try to let's be more like our competitors, let's try to be more like this other, I'm becoming a lot more comfortable with our value proposition and then doubling down on that, right? Like these are the things we do well. Let's do that even better. Let's keep making those capabilities even sharper and more capable.
I agree, and you're going to see that in a pendulum swing too. So there's that swing of, boy, I just want everything to just do it for me, right? I want it to do it for me. I want it to drop automatically into my grade book. I don't want to have to think about it. I don't want to have to really be involved all that much. But as education is continuing on further and further, what's going to happen is, and we're starting to hear it now, right? One of the reasons that AI is such a shiny penny in education is because there's this internal fear, and I hear it talked about a little bit, that AI is going to replace us. AI is going to replace teachers because, the AI knows more about history than I do, or the AI even knows more about math than I do. And admittedly, I look to AI for certain things, but in the same aspect, I still don't want AI to tell me that my nurse knows how to take care of a patient appropriately. I still don't want AI to tell me that my paramedic is competent when it comes to dynamic cardiology and their knowledge of how to treat a patient. I still don't want that. I still don't want that. And I don't want it because I don't want to remove the human piece of it. And I have a feeling that that's the swing that we're going to see in that pendulum is let's not remove the human piece. And the more that other places will start to remove the human piece, eventually that pendulum swings back and people say, hey, I don't really like that because it removes me as the instructor. And I'm already in fear of that. I already have some fear of that happening with AI in general. And now you're saying that competency is going to be judged in some way, shape, or form by AI. I don't know if I want to go in that direction. I really
Yep.
don't.
Same. Same.
Yeah, you can have all the cameras watching it and going, okay, they did this movement right and they did that movement right. Nah, it still doesn't work for me.
Yep.
Still doesn't
Yep.
work for me.
We've had a few sort of prospect customers, I'm not going to name names or anything, that Uh, maybe I guess like finger wagging a little bit about like you better get on the bandwagon with AI. Acadicus better get, and we're of course doing internal testing and we're learning and studying, but it is way too early to be unleashing AI with students at this point. And there's so much. There's a lot of danger in it. There's a lot of uncertainty in terms of where that goes. And so again, we're about stability and we're just about observing what's working. But the last thing that I want to do is start to integrate a technology that it's designed to replace the instructors. And so many of these prospects are coming to this that have been teaching. They've been instructors in nursing and medical instructors for decades. And they're just so confident that your platform has to be AI because I don't want to have to do any grading. I don't want to facilitate the scenario. I don't want to have to play the role of a patient. We don't want to have standardized patients anymore. We want everything to be AI. And, sort of like if you peel one layer back on that, you realize that they're talking about a situation where they're looking for a platform that does everything they do so they don't have to do it anymore. But guess what? If you don't have to do it anymore, you don't have a job anymore. Like,
You're replacing
like you're
yourself.
replacing yourself. I mean, and I never understand that, where
Yeah.
people are just like, it has to be all AI. We don't want to have to do anything anymore. We just want it all automated because it's such a
Yeah.
pain to have to grade those students. And it's such a pain to have to do that follow-up assessment after the scenario. It's just like, what are you in this for? Like, aren't you a teacher? Don't you want to teach? Don't you want to engage with your students? You don't want to send them off in a corner with a headset, say like, okay, let me know when you're done, and the grade book's automatically updated. I mean, that's cool, but that's not what we're building. And the
No.
farther we get into this, the more confident I am in that, and the more our customers are starting to agree. They're
Agreed.
seeing that real value, and I think we're always going to stay the course with that. But again, we're always
Yeah.
testing internally. We're not avoiding or ignoring AI. Obviously, it's a very powerful thing, but it has to be dealt with in a very careful way. And I think it needs to be studied a lot more than it is at a very high level academic level, not just, we just rolled it out to a bunch of our customers and we're getting some feedback on what they like or dislike. That's still extremely reckless, in my opinion.
Yeah.
There's a lot
Yeah.
more testing that needs to be done before you can let your students interact with these things because and even the people that are building a lot of this AI don't even know really how it works or what it's
Yeah.
doing. That's a little
Yeah.
scary. So I think I would, always err on the side of caution and study and make sure that we have, demonstrated, value proposition there before you go and build that. And safety most
Yeah.
most importantly of all.
The two things for me that, if AI were incorporated in some way, the two things for me would be for AI to see my mouth and my mouth movement and move the mouth on the mannequin, right? So like, it watch my mouth movement and move the mouth on the mannequin. How possible that is, I have no idea. Okay. And the other one for me would be to be able to modulate my voice because one of the problems that I have, right, is when we're doing like birthing mannequin and stuff like that. Now, that scares me a little bit. I'll be honest. The voice modulation scares me a little bit. But when we're doing stuff with the birthing mannequin, I have some instructors who are really great acting as the birthing mannequin, and I have some instructors who actually feel really embarrassed acting as the birthing mannequin and stuff like that. So, I'm barely embarrassed by anything. So if it were possible for those kind of things, but that's just keeping the instructor still involved. The voice modulation worries me the most, and I think there would be a lot of testing that would have to be behind that because that could be used in a not so great way. There are definitely ways that could be used badly. As far as like letting AI completely take over what I do and letting, an AI speak completely for the patient, no, yeah, I'm not there yet. I'm just not there yet. Will I potentially be in the future? Could AI, do that for us? Yeah, I could be there in the future. I'm just not there yet. Not because not even necessarily because I'm afraid I would lose my job or, I'm getting rid of myself, but I want the least amount of mistakes possible. And if I'm sitting there with that scenario and I have that scenario, I know exactly what's going on in that scenario, and that student does something that's completely unexpected, I want to be able to change that quickly and on my end. And that I don't think AI has that capability yet. I don't think it's going to have that capability yet. Future, sure, maybe, but yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah,
yeah,
it's an exciting new frontier. It's just another layer, another
yeah.
area to explore. And from a technical perspective, there's so much to learn and understand. And, there's like all these layers of this innovation where it's like simulation as a whole, even with mannequin simulation, even that is still growing as in
Oh
terms
yeah.
of adoption, right? Like it's not like this widely, I mean, it's much more widely accepted now than it's ever been, but we're still at a point where most of the people we talk to remember when it wasn't a thing
Oh
and
yeah.
now it
Oh,
is a thing,
absolutely.
right? So that happened really, really fast, but like it's still growing, it's still percolating into different areas, and different industries are finding value in that. And then now there's this virtual dimension to it. Okay, what's this good for? How can we take this into it? And then there's this AI thing, and so it's just all these layers of innovation. But I think it takes patience, testing, roll a very patient rollout, and continue to refine from there. So
Yeah, it's the story of the tortoise and the hare, right? I mean, we know the story and we know who wins.
that's
So,
right. That's right.
like that's really what it is staying the course, doing the right thing, making sure that you're taking your time and not, straying off and I think the tortoise and the hare that I'm thinking of is the one that was done by like, Looney Tunes, right? And the hare goes over and starts talking to all the other girls and all that kind of stuff and whatever, and the tortoise just kind of goes on by. And I think that's really that I don't know if that's the best story to use for it. Actually, I think it is a pretty good one
It's pretty
because
good.
it is
Yeah.
pretty good. Yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty good.
wait a minute, was that a good story or was that
Yeah,
not a good story? That's a good example. It's
absolutely.
a good
Well,
example.
yeah, for sure. I mean, in so many different ways, like as a company and as a platform, we've operated that way where we're slow and steady, where we're not taking huge amounts of investment capital that's going to require a return on that investment. That's one of the big decisions that we made that was extremely difficult because who doesn't want, a couple $1 million to work with to build your platform? I mean,
Of
there's
course.
so many things we could do with that, right? But what I'm interested in is the long-term survivable, I think Philip Rosedale, the founder of Linden Lab, said that, the key performance indicator, the KPI in the virtual world is really survival. And the longer you can survive, the more of those use cases are demonstrated, the more mature the industry gets, the more likely it is that you're going to survive for the long haul. But I think the temptation is you can take a lot of money and you can build really fast, but those investors are going to require a return on that investment in a very short amount of time. And if you can't give that money back to those investors, they're going to pull the plug, they're going to pull the rug out from under you, and
Yep.
that's not going to serve anybody. So that's some very, very difficult decisions. And I think we're one of the only platforms that hasn't done that because I care about long-term value. And that makes it a very challenging prospect at times. But now we're at a point where we've got plenty of customers that are using it, adopting it, and their subscriptions help support the platform, and we're in it for the long haul. At this point, we have a very stable situation where we're going to be able to continue to grow into the future. And I'm hoping, yeah, we'll be the tortoise that
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
we're still going. We may not
Um,
have the biggest booth at IMSH, but we're still
yeah.
here, and our customers are still using it, and they're still finding real value, and it's growing, and it's building, and they're publishing, and we're keeping, we're staying on message. And I'm hoping that that helps us in the long run. But we'll see. Who knows? You know.
I'm just really glad I got to be there near the beginning of the race. I wasn't there
You
from the
were,
very
you
beginning,
were.
but near the
Couldn't have
beginning
done
of
it
the
without
race,
you.
Well, and that's the thing. I saw the value in it, and I saw the value in the people too. That was the other thing, and getting to know everyone. I mean, I've gotten to know developers, like they've had kids, and you're like, oh man, that's so great, congratulations, and like so you get to really know some of these people, and it it becomes sort of family like, and I'm not good at that. Like I am not good at making like really major connections with people and stuff like that. Most people are like, oh, he's an extrovert. I'm actually not. I'm actually kind of an introvert more than anything else.
Same.
Yeah, I can do presentations and all of that, and when I'm with people and doing demos, we're having a good time and it seems great. And then I go home and I'm just like, I'm at home, and just
Same.
like I'm sitting in my room and stuff like that. So, um, but it's really been great too to get to know the people. And sitting down with you, John, I just won't forget it in the beginning when we sat down and you just sat and listened, like, what has this guy done? What is the experience? What kind of things has he done in his time and in his career? And then how can a catechist add to that? And that's a little different than maybe some of the other business models where it's more like, well, you've been a nursing instructor for a really long time, or you've been a paramedic for a really long time. Here's the stuff we offer, more so than, okay, what did you do? What was important to you? What's important to you when it comes to teaching cardiology, and how can we then, develop something that will help with that? And I like that business model a lot more. I mean, again, I've been around, it'll be 6 years. It'll be coming up on 6 years.
Yes. Yes.
Which is really cool, and
That's
it's just,
amazing.
yeah, it is. It is. And that's the longevity. That's,
Yeah.
that's the tortoise in there. That's the longevity.
Yep.
And that's what really keeps the lights on, so to speak.
It's community and it's interpersonal relationships. It's not about a transactional. How much does your platform cost? Here it is. Okay, here's a license, ready, set, go. It's more about like getting to know each other. Like you just like you said, it's most of our customers, if not all of them, I consider friends first. Like that's, I mean, maybe to a fault where I consider these people to be very close collaborators and friends, and I've gotten to know them over the course of many years. And the really cool thing is that almost universally, they've all leveled up. Like they've
Oh yeah.
all, since I met them, they were like, I got this thing with VR. I'm not sure what I want to do. And then we implement it and they find some value and they level up their careers and they're like growing. And it's just been so exciting to see that. And that's my favorite thing. I think that's what I fell in love with early on was that strong, close-knit community in simulation. And we're just really trying to build on that existing method rather than trying to reinvent the wheel. And I've never really felt like Acadicus is a good fit for that transactional kind of like here's your say, a point of sale, you get the platform, you use it. It's more about like, come on in. Like, let's hear about where are some gaps in your program, and maybe we can figure out a way that our platform can, because it's very malleable, right? Like a
Yes.
catechus is more like a liquid than a static artifact, right?
Yes.
It's a thing that can fit into your program like a glove. Like, where do you need help, and we can fit in there rather than we do this one thing and that's all we do, and we can just sort of like shoehorn that into your program and hopefully it works, but we're more
Yeah.
about getting to know them over a course of several months, several years, and really deeply entrenching into that to be able to have long-term sustainable value. The
Yeah.
tortoise.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I at first, just like, was that a bad example?
It's great. I think about it
does
all the time. Well,
does
another way
anybody
people
want to be the tortoise? But actually, you kind of do, because the tortoise wins, you
Yeah,
know?
somebody said once that I'm like the Forrest Gump of VR, healthcare simulation, where, I just keep on just like I'm persistent, I keep
Yeah,
going, I'm
yeah.
just like just
You're
running
you're
along,
running.
I'm just running,
Yep.
and things just keep working out, and it's just
Well,
been a great exciting space to be in.
that's a really great example too, because as Forrest Gump is constantly running, all of these people start joining and running with him.
Yes,
Like
yes,
all
that's
of these
it.
people started following him and joining him and running with him, man. So like, I wasn't first to start running behind you, but I came in kind of early on and started running behind you. I'm like, hey, that guy knows where he's going. He's got something going on. So
He even went
yeah,
through a beard phase too.
What's
So
that?
he even went through a beard phase in the movie,
That's
right?
right, he did. That's right. That's right.
So that's
There you
well, this
go,
has been a
man.
great episode, Bill. I enjoy talking
Yeah.
to you as always. Another
And
simulation
of
pulse in
course,
the
yeah.
book. So
Yeah.
we're coming up on the holidays. I think we're good for next week yet, the Friday. We're probably not
Mhm.
going to do one the following, the 27th. So we're not going to have a
Okay.
pulse on the 27th, but we'll do one on the 20th. And we'll see you there. Thanks for joining. Thanks for watching. And we'll see you
Absolutely.
next Friday.
Yep. See
Thanks,
you next
Bill.
Friday.
All right.
Yep.
Cheers.
Take care.